We
All
want
right.
to make sure we're recording here.
Okay, sure.
Thank everyone for joining us for today's Member Monday, Solving Business Issues with Analytics, presented by Matt Dean, CPA with Hantzmon Wiebel. And Matt has extensive experience in auditing and accounting and enjoys finding ways to improve business processes through new technology. He has presented on this subject before, several months ago for Member Monday, and we're glad to have him back. And before we turn it over to you, Matt, I wanted to turn it over to Elizabeth to give her a few words.
Well, sure. I just wanted to say good morning again. I'm glad we're doing these Member Mondays. It can be challenging doing them virtually, but I really think being able to record them and spread them throughout our membership so they're available on demand has been fantastic. So looking forward to this presentation as well. So I'm not going to take any more of your time, Matt. Let's just take it away.
All right. Well, great. Well, good morning again, everyone. And thanks to the Chamber for setting these up. And thanks especially to Andrea for organizing and getting everyone here. I'm part of Hantzmon Wiebel's Business Insights and Analytics team. So I'm always excited to talk about the data analytics topic. We've got some tools for you to use today before you get into any sort of data analytics project. I've got an example of a project that we put together from actual nonprofit data, and hopefully it will give you some good ideas on maybe some projects you can use at your own organization. But before we get into anything data related, I know everyone's here to hear about data analytics, but before you start on any kind of data project, any kind of endeavor like this, it's really important to know first what you want to change. So is there some area you want to improve on your business? Is there some issue you're having? Make sure you identify what you want to solve first. Start with the end in mind is a good way to put it. So you really can put any kind of data into a graphic or a dashboard, which is good, but if you don't have a goal in mind with it, it could just end up being, another report people aren't really looking at. So to help with this, we've got an exercise I like to suggest, just to do some brainstorming and see if you can narrow down to a couple topics that you like to work on at your organization. So the exercise is, imagine you had a magic wand with unlimited wishes. What would you change about your organization? So, feel free to start writing some ideas down now or later on if you want, but this is a good exercise to do with your team. You can do it alone, but if you have your team involved, they'll have some input and probably can generate some more ideas than just doing it alone. I know if I had, the data analytics team with me, they usually have a lot more ideas than I do. So it's helpful to have your group together to do this. So, really it's a brainstorming exercise. So you're coming up with ideas, and since you have the magic wand, you're not worried about any barriers, any cost issues with these. You're just trying to get out all the ideas that you can. It could be anything really. So you might wish that you had more sales from your company. You might wish that your customers were happier. You might wish that you didn't spend so much money on whatever. So, just list out all the responses and then narrow it down to the top 2 or 3 that you think will give you the most benefit. And that's what's really important, because you can obviously get some overwhelming number of projects to work on here. But if you narrow it down to the top couple that are going to give you the most benefit, that will help inform what you want to do with your data project. So with that, we'll talk a little bit more about data. So the definition of data analytics is the process of accumulating, cleaning, and summarizing data for the purpose of making decisions. So this graphic really illustrates the key point I want to make today, and that is your data should be used to inform some type of action. You should be using your data to decide what course of action to take in the future. Really, that's when you're going to get the most benefit out of any kind of data analytics related project, is if you've got some sort of action in mind. You know, a lot of organizations are already tracking what their key metrics are. Those really tell you where you've been, but if you get some good data behind your decisions, you can use that to, you know, help move your organization forward. And again, you know, if you're just measuring the data for the sake of measuring it, you're not necessarily using that to drive action. So I do have a sample here in a couple minutes that I'll show you, you know, some visualizations that might give you a better idea. So what sort of data would you need for a data analytics project? Well, once you have a goal in mind for what you want to improve about your organization, that can help inform you about what sort of data you would need to make that decision. So data can be a barrier for these projects. We've tried to do some projects where they either don't have the data or the data is really messy, which, you know, we can get the data cleaned up, but the more organized your data is, the easier it will be to start. So if you decide there's a direction you want to go to improve your organization and you don't currently have the data to make that type of decision, just go ahead and start capturing that data now. It may take a little while to get some good historical data for you to use, but if you start capturing it now, then moving forward, you'll continue to accumulate that. So hypothetically, if increasing customer satisfaction was the goal you came out with as part of your magic wand exercise, you need a way to track your customer satisfaction. So you might start sending customer surveys. You might look at how frequently the customers come back to buy from you, how long they've been customers. If you have a goal of increasing the turnaround time on sales, maybe from the time the order comes in the door to the time the order is shipped, you would really need to know how long it's taking you now before you can make any decisions on how to improve that turnaround time. You know, for nonprofits usually have a lot of data too. You know, they may have a goal of increasing fundraising, and they want to see which fundraising appeals are most successful. So you could look at that and see, you know, maybe the paper mailings aren't doing so well anymore. Maybe the email blasts are doing better. But again, you would need a way to track that information and pull it all together. As far as data sources go, most organizations have several. They may not think about them as data sources, but they're there. So one of the key ones is accounting records. You could also have, you know, some organizations have workflow management software, like we have software that tracks where the tax returns are in the process. Equipment records, some manufacturing equipment can kick out some good data. GPS records on vehicles, donor databases. All of that's good places to pull data from. And the data analytics process becomes really powerful when you're pulling in data from separate sources and then combining them to identify relationships between the data. That's where you'll get the most benefit out of any kind of project like this. One example is you might look at the historical weather trends compared to your sales and, you know, just see what you can, if you can identify any patterns about, you know, what your sales might be like depending on the weather. You know, if you have a golf course or something, you probably already know on the rainy days it's going to be slower, but or other types of businesses, it might not be that obvious. Once you have that data identified and you've identified some trends, you can use that to inform some future actions. So you start pulling in weather forecasts for the next week or two, and if it looks like it's going to be rainy, maybe you can use that to adjust your staffing levels and maybe have less people scheduled on the rainier days, you know. Um, and again, most organizations have separate databases. You know, most nonprofits have a donor database. They've got accounting records, and from what I've seen, most of the time those aren't integrated. So you can use some type of data analytics tool to bring those together and see if you can identify any trends or anything there. But again, if you're starting with the end in mind, if you've got a goal in mind before you get started, that'll really help you figure out what kind of data you need to get started. So I do have an example visualization here pulled up. So this is one we put together based on some actual nonprofit data. There's lots you can do with for-profit organizations also, obviously. And I will show you, this is what it looked like first. So this is the raw data that came out of the system. And then after doing some work on it, oh, let's see, that's the wrong one. Once you do some work on it and put it into a data analytics platform, you can get a lot more information out of it, really. So this organization, you know, going back to their magic wand ideas, they got some things they wanted to improve out of their magic wand tool. They feel like their current capacity is limited. They would love to be able to serve more people, but they feel like their current space is kind of cramped on the busy days, especially. They don't feel like they have enough room in their current office. They feel like there's a continued need. They would like to be able to expand to help more people. And they've also heard some complaints that their office is too far for some people to be able to get to. So, you know, the questions are, how can they track this, you know, whether or not they're meeting their goal of helping more people? Do they need a new office location? And if so, where should they put it? So for the question of if they're meeting their goal of expanding services, this graphic here is a quick read of how they're doing. So it's a small organization. So this shows that they helped 4 people over the last month. And they had a goal of helping 6 people. And since they didn't quite make the goal, this graphic here is showing up as red. It's just a quick visual cue to say, hey, we're a little bit behind where we would like to be. And the great thing about these is they're all interactive. So for example, this is how they would, you know, kind of tweak the goal they have and see this right now, it's a shooting for a 7% increase over the prior month. So they can tweak this, you know, down to whatever percentage they would like for their goal to be. And then if you look at it this way, you'll see if they met their goal, it turns green, which is kind of cool. The graph behind it also shows the number of people served over time. So it's just a quick visual cue to see how they're doing as far as how many people they're serving in the area. On their capacity issue, as far as do they have space to serve all the people they want to serve, this graph here, this line graph, can be helpful. So the dark green one in front shows the actual number of people served by month. And depending on your data, you know, this is all customizable, of course. You could show it by week or even by day. It shows the number of people served, and then the lighter green line along the middle here is their capacity. So you can see at certain times they were over capacity, way over capacity for the month. But then once they get closer into COVID times, they see that dropped off because there's less people actually coming into their office for assistance. So going back to their question of, do they need a new location? Well, if this trend continues, maybe their current space is plenty of space for them. If things hopefully go back to normal, they would be able to serve more people. But just based on this, you know, it kind of looks like they should wait and see, really. The other question on their location was, if they move, do they need to move to a different location? Are they okay where they are? So this map here is interactive, and it shows where the people are, where the people live that they're helping. So their office is in 22903 here. And the darker the color on this map, the more people served in this area. So you can just hover over and see the number of people served. In 22903 was 179. Farther out in 22980, there was only 1. So from this, it looks like they're in a central place, and it's pretty good as far as the number of people served. And one of the things that's really cool about this graphic, you can click on this 22903 location, and it'll apply that to the rest of the graphics here. So you can see the line graph change. If you're just looking at 22903, if that's all the people they had coming in, they'd have plenty of capacity. But since people come in from other locations, they went over a little bit. But this is just showing totals for the period. It's not actually showing trends of what happened over the last couple of years. So the scatter plot here down at the bottom is pretty cool as far as identifying trends. So you can just see this trend in the 22903 zip code. They were really low in 2015, and then it's gone up in 2019, and then COVID happened and dropped back off in 2020. So this is really helpful in identifying trends in the different locations. So you can also click on 22901, see it's kind of a little more flat than 03, but it's just a great visualization to help you identify trends in the data over time. And for this graph here too, again, it could be translated to a for-profit to show you where your customers are coming from, where your sales are coming from, or a nonprofit. You might even map out your donors here, see where most of your donors live. This can, if they live farther away, it can be zoomed out, but everyone here is local, so it's just showing our immediate area. So, for the big picture, again, going back to make sure you have a goal in mind before you undertake any kind of data project. You really can get a lot more insights out of something like this than you can looking at regular reports, but you don't want to overwhelm people with data. So it's helpful to have some goal in mind before you get started. But this really shows you, it gives you a lot more insight into what's happening over time. Like you can look at trends here and identify if there's anything going on you wouldn't see just looking at the raw data. And it also, I mentioned before, bringing in data from different sources. This is just from their program database showing the number of people served. If you were looking at this for a for-profit, you'd probably look at revenue by person. Obviously, they're not making revenue off the people they're helping here in this case, but you could pull in those accounting and sales records and get some more insights there. So that pretty much covers what I had for today. Does anyone have any questions or anything they wanted to go over before we are finished?
I actually had a question.
Okay.
I think that dashboard is so interesting and enlightening, and I'm not clear on how automated that process is. If there are things that are updating, if somebody's updating your database over here, is that going to automatically populate this dashboard here, or is somebody responsible for making those changes? How does that work?
It depends on the system. So ideally, you want that to update automatically, right? At least daily. So depending on where you're getting the data from, you can do it so it's automatic. So for example, I mentioned we've got time and billing and workflow management here at Hantzmon Wiebel. That's all integrated. when we get data out of that, it's going to export every day at 6 a.m. So it'll export this Excel file at 6 a.m., save it on a folder, and then Power BI, the data analytics tool, is going to read that every day at 6 a.m. and it'll update. So for us, it'll be updated every day. If you're able to link up to a database in another way, like you could have real-time data. So it really just depends on how the system is set up.
Okay, thanks. Cool.
Any other questions or comments or anything? All right.
I don't have a question or a comment. First, I want to apologize for showing up late. I had a business call come in. But what I did see is very impressive, and I just wanted to make a comment that I appreciate you supporting Member Mondays and coming on, because I do want to see this grow and more people take advantage of it. And also, your slides are very impressive, and your presentation, what you had to say, was very clear, and I want to thank you for that.
Great, thanks. I appreciate the feedback. I can't take all the credit because I have another person on the team who couldn't be here today. She put together the dashboard, and of course I had someone proofread my slides, because if it were me, there'd be a typo in there somewhere. So we got a great team here helping with this too. And I agree, the Member Mondays are great. So I appreciate the chamber doing those.
Hey, Matt, I have a question.
Sure.
Just wondered if you could say one more time about the magic wand tool that you were discussing at the beginning. I had to answer the door and I think I missed part of that explanation, but how can someone find a tool like that?
I've got a worksheet I can send you, but really it's just a brainstorming tool. You know, you imagine you've got a magic wand with unlimited wishes, and then with those wishes, what would you change about your organization or your business? So
Got it.
It's really an easy way to come up with some ideas. And it's good when we've done this with people, especially if you've got a diverse group in the room, you get some things that you wouldn't have thought of. So they'll have some really great ideas.
You mentioned you have a worksheet. Could you make that available to us? Because I would like to see that as well.
Yes, I can. Andrea, can I send that to you with the slides and have you send it out? I can do that. I like this tool. I mean, it's really easy and a good way to get some information.
Well, not only as a group, as a team, but as personal as well, to help us think a little bit more clearly and come up with ideas. I'm thinking I could use that almost on a daily basis. But it's a great concept. I like it.
For sure. I remember being a new staff here at Hantzmon Wiebel, and they asked us to identify goals for the next year. And those are always hard to come up with for me. So I think putting it in this context, it makes it a little easier. So
it does, because we hear about setting goals all the time and how it's important to write our goals down so they are in front of us and it's something real. It doesn't mean we can't change it.
Right.
Some of us have a hard time envisioning those goals because we let that, how can I do it, or it's impossible, kind of get in the way. But the whole magic wand idea is genius. I think I'm going to use that. Thank you.
Sure. Glad it's helpful.
Any other questions for Matt? Well, Matt, as always, we thank you for taking the time to facilitate a Member Monday for us. And again, if you have any other interesting topics down the road, just let me know and we'll get you plugged in, because we do have a number of open dates for the remainder of 2021.
Okay, sure. Sounds great. Yeah, thanks again for having me, and thanks everyone for your time this morning.
Okay.
Thanks everyone. Good to see you.
Have a good afternoon.